Hey guys, I'm Tech Nate.
I'm Rusty Sheriff's Badge,
Today on our episode of Tech Talk,
PlayStation Edition.
Part 2, we're going to discuss the press conference Sony held this past week regarding the PlayStation Slim and the PlayStation Pro. As we discussed in last week's episode, we kind of went with the rumors and speculations. They were going to call it the Neo. Not the case. It is officially the PS4 Pro. Also, the PS4 Slim holds true almost right to the T. So covering that quickly, what they said was everything that everyone has been talking about is completely true. The build, the design, everything looked exactly like the leaked images and videos.
Well, yeah, essentially just proving that what they had was the real deal.
To sum it up, it's taking place of the PlayStation 4 that we all now have. The design is the matte black, slightly smaller build, rounded corners, etc. They did eliminate the optical audio out. The controller design is just as we discussed. It's going to have a see-through window for the sensor light. So at the press conference, they did indeed show the 500 gig PS4 Slim model, but there will indeed be a 1 terabyte model as well.
Yeah, it's listed all over the place.
I mean, covering most of the bases on the Slim, that's what it is. They changed the design, eliminated the optical out, and a little rearranging of the light bar so you can see it a little better when you're playing your games and stuff. So moving forward with the PS4 Pro, some of the major changes that I seen was the design. It is more so a PS4 Slim, beefed up a little. It's got a third tier as opposed to two. The controller will be the same as what we discussed about the Slim. Will have an optical audio out. Will enter the market with a 1 terabyte hard drive, eliminating the 500 altogether. And now to cover all the technical details of the PS4 Pro, Rusty?
All right, so it actually is the base version, the base speculated version, the 4.2 teraflop console. What it has inside of it is essentially the same Jaguar processor, just clocked up a little bit, the same memory clocked up a little bit, but it has a new custom GPU built in it with more cores, higher clock speed, stuff like that to get it to that 4.2 teraflop compute performance. They did this largely to keep the cost down and keep the size of the box down and stuff like that, and it's just a hair larger than your original PS4. It looks bigger in the pictures. It's because of that third tier, but it is just slightly larger than the original PS4.
And it probably looks larger just because it was side by side with the Slim,
Yeah,
which is already smaller than the original PS4.
So, all in all, I do not like the design. I think it's hideous.
Really?
I mean, like maybe my mind will change once I have the thing sitting in front of me, but I mean, I don't like what they did at all. But yeah, essentially. What this is just basically a mid-generation upgrade to give you better performance and better graphics. What it has in it right now, they talked a lot during the press conference about 4K, 4K, 4K. Not very many people talked about native 4K resolution. The reason being is that there really isn't a whole lot. There isn't enough hardware in the system to do consistent native 4K resolution at 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. That's, I mean, you can't really go by the hard numbers essentially, but there's only so much you can do with custom chips and software to make it actually work. So a lot of these things are going to be using different software techniques, the different rendering techniques. There's one that they're talking about right now is the checkerboard rendering and stuff like that. You guys will have to do a lot of research on that if you want to understand how it works. Essentially, what it does is it takes the two boxes and basically just kind of extrapolates and makes. It's kind of hard to explain and without going too technical with it, but it's not true 4K rendering. It does actually output, I think, a 4K frame buffer, but I'm not 100% on that. So it's not a full huge jump forward. It's basically just a small graphical leap just to make the games look better. Run a little bit smoother. There's going to be options for 1080p also, so you don't have to have a 4K television to really enjoy the PS4 Pro. A lot of developers are going to be making their current games that run at 1080p run smoother, faster, run a little bit better. I think they showed off Paragon, running at 1080p, you could actually see there was a lot more, ground effects like foliage. There was higher resolution textures, stuff like that. The character models look better light rays and stuff like that. So it's going to be totally up to the developers as far as like what they want to do. The thing that Sony has put in place is a policy that the PS4 Pro titles they cannot run worse than their PS4 counterparts. So say you have a 1080p 30 frame per second game, the PS4 Pro version of that can be up-resed, but it cannot drop below 30 frames per second.
Right.
Another thing that they will not allow is PS4 Pro players will not get a higher frame rate in multiplayer titles compared to the PS4 counterparts, because in some cases having a higher frame rate will give you an advantage over the other people with a lower frame rate.
Right.
So a lot of different things that they kind of went over. I don't think they covered enough. They didn't really sell people on this. This is actually going to be a really tough sell, because in order to really see the advantage, you have got to see these videos running on a 4K television with HDR, because HDR is going to be a huge game changer, and that is one of the major features that they're bringing to the PS4 Pro and also to all PS4s, which is technically funny how they're going to do this. I don't honestly know exactly how they're going to pull this off, but see, high dynamic range, what that allows is more vibrancy in the colors. It gives you a broader spectrum. Instead of just seeing certain colors edge to edge, like a dark shade of gray and a lighter shade of gray with like a really stiff transition in between, you'll see the flowing transition of multiple colors going into it. The brights will be brighter, sunlight, just all sorts of other lighting effects. Explosions will actually somewhat pop out of the screen at you. They'll be more realistic looking with HDR. In some cases, high dynamic range actually makes more of a difference in the image than 4K resolution does.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see how developers really push that. Going back to the PS4, the PS4 is all getting an update next week to allow high dynamic range. I don't recall what version of HDMI they have built into the boxes on the PS4, but you need, I think it's HDMI 2.0A to use high dynamic range, and I'm pretty sure that all the PS4s have 1.4.
1.4, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't exactly know how they're going to pull off HDR on the original PS4s. It might just be kind of like Sony's own software version of it, like a low-end version of HDR, kind of like a simulated version. I don't think it's going to be full HDR10.
Right. Some kind of visual trickery. Maybe.
Yeah. So I think it's really going to be their own deal. Going back to the design of the PS4 Pro, I think the reason why it's built like that is just because they had the PS4 Slim that they were designing with the cooling system and all that stuff, and putting that much more hardware, that kind of that higher clocked hardware inside the original case. Maybe they had to redesign the cooling system, and they were just kind of working on a similar design with the Slim and the Pro at the exact same time, just the Pro version being a little bit beefier. Anyways, you get that kind of technology crammed in that size of a box. It's bigger, but it's still small. It's still a really small box. Yeah. They got to cool that stuff, because that stuff is going to run hot. So
might allow for some more ventilation, though, having two dividers between the three tiers.
So I mean, like I said, I could grow to like it over time, but I'm not real sure at this point. I've seen enough high res pictures to.
I myself like I consider it a drastic change over the 2-tier. It's kind of an eye catcher. I get bored of things quickly though, but I do like the design so far from what I've seen. I think once I get one in person, I'll probably fall in love with it even more.
As far as patches for all their games, anything that's already released and stuff like that, the patches will be free. People were worried that they were going to have to pay for the upgrade for the PS4 Pro version and stuff like that. The patches will all be free, and you'll actually, if you do still go buy physical game discs and stuff like that, when you go to the store, there will be a tag on there that explains that it's been upgraded for PS4 Pro, and I'm sure Nate can throw a picture of that right about here, so people will be able to recognize, that does actually have upgrades for PS4 Pro.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about that press conference. I was not impressed with that press conference. That was probably one of the worst press conferences they've had in a long time. Like usually they come out with a bang at E3, all the other different shows and stuff like that, but this press conference was just a bore. I thought it was going to be longer than an hour. It felt like it was over way too soon. They jumped from point A to point B way too fast.
45 minutes or
yeah,
something?
Roughly in that area. And it was just, they didn't touch on all the things they needed to touch on. The biggest thing with the PS4 Pro is it needs to have a purpose. It's going to be hard. This is the first time anyone has done a mid-generation console upgrade. So how do you sell this to people, especially when all the stuff you're trying to sell them is visual, and a lot of people don't have 4K TVs with HDR to see the difference?
See, I think a lot of the hype was ruined by Sony allowing things to be leaked, or however that happened. I think they just everything was already leaked, so they're all like, just here it is.
Well, even still, it was such a just a bland showing of everything. It was just like, here's this game running, here's this game running, and then the people streaming it, we couldn't see all the effects. We couldn't see the 4K resolution. We couldn't see the HDR. At one point, I'm pretty sure Mark Cerny was showing off a video, and he said, "Now I'm going to turn HDR on." And all the people at home that don't know any better are probably sitting there waiting for it to turn on. Like, I didn't see a difference, So it was just kind of strange, the way they did that. And then everything that they're discussing as far as like what people want to know, they're doing in interviews afterwards. So everything they needed to talk about at the show happened after the show. So why did they have the event? I really don't get it.
So I guess if you want, hop on over to YouTube. They do have a 4K quality video up there. We just checked it out before we started this video. We watched Horizon Zero Dawn
running at 4K and also 1080.
Incredible.
Major difference.
Unreal, actually. So if you have the opportunity and you have the proper equipment to view that, do so.
Of course, you're going to need a 4K television or monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put the link down in the description.
Another thing we need to touch on is the fact that they didn't give this thing a purpose. What they should have done is they should have spent a lot of time talking about the benefits that they'll get from running PlayStation's VR. That could have been the huge push point for this, because if you look at the video game industry as it sits now and the way it's been for a while, there hasn't been a whole lot of innovation. VR could be the major innovation that happens to push the industry forward, and PlayStation is poised to have the best VR offering as far as software and exposure to the general public and stuff like that. So they could have used this as a way to say, hey, now we have a system that really pushes our VR, really can showcase what we can do with this headset. And I mean, they showed like one game.
Yeah, I mean, really, they didn't push that at all, because basically what they're saying is if you have a PS4, you can run it.
Yeah.
If you get a PS4 Pro,
yeah. So it's like it could run better, it's up to developers and stuff like that. But they need to push innovation, especially if they're doing this mid-generation console upgrade. They need to push innovation with this thing, or else it's going to be dead in the water.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see a need to have one. I honestly don't. But I've only seen one 4K video right now running. I was truly impressed by it, but do I need a mid-generation console upgrade? Being a PlayStation fan, a gaming fan in general, I just want to play good quality games.
Yep.
That's what I want, But they're trying to keep up with the PC market and, just have better graphics and stuff like that. It's like, graphics don't make a game. They don't. But they are nice to look at. But at what point does it become old and sterile and stuff like that?
Ultimately, to make this clear, if you don't have a 4K or HDR panel of any kind, you're not going to benefit much, if at all, out of this.
Yeah.
It is going to...
You will, to a degree.
Right.
Like your games will run smoother, stuff like that, but it's not as substantial like an upgrade as if you had 4K with HDR.
Yeah.
Be very careful. If you're looking to get the full spectrum of the benefits from the PS4 Pro, you need to get a 4K television with high dynamic range. That's a must. High dynamic range is just as important as the 4K resolution.
Yep.
Does not actually. A lot of people do not like this aspect of it. It does not come with a UHD Blu-ray drive in it.
That was the first thing I said after I watched it.
Now, I am of a differing opinion on this. I honestly don't believe that it needs a UHD Blu-ray drive in it. I have migrated almost fully to all digital streaming, digital downloads and stuff like that. I don't see the need for a UHD Blu-ray drive in there. I buy my game consoles to play video games. I'm not worried about watching movies and stuff like that.
I can understand though, because a lot of people use, I mean, even I did for a long time. I used all my Sony consoles as my main home theater, and it's kind of disappointing to think about it. I mean, if Sony was the innovator, they're the patent holder for this. I mean,
they're only part of the actual board of companies in charge of Blu-ray. They don't, like, there are a lot of different people actually think that Sony owns Blu-ray technology. They don't own it. They're just part of the board that oversees Blu-ray technology. So they don't have to put it in there, but Andrew House just did an interview based off of, he said, market research. He said he didn't see the need to put it in there because the adoption rate has not been that good for UHD Blu-rays anyways.
That's true too, yeah.
I mean, I'm going to kind of go, I mean, and you look at the way they did things, you know, the PlayStation pushed CD-ROMs, PS2 pushed DVD-ROMs. PS3 pushed Blu-rays, and then onto the PS4 Blu-rays, and now they've totally transitioned to not worrying about the optical disc drive at all. It still plays the same discs, everything that the PS4 original played, also what the Ps4 Slim plays. They all work exactly the same.
And
they just don't have UHD capability.
And that's something that they worded as forward compatibility.
Forward compatibility, yeah. So basically, everything you get on the PS4 will work on the Pro. Everything you get on the Pro will work on the PS4. Yep. They don't want to cut any of their customers off from any of the content, you know. So it's a wise move. I think that's another reason why they don't want to beef it up too much. I don't know how the developers feel about it, because now it puts a lot more weight on their shoulders. I'm sure the first-party studios are absolutely just loving it, but third-party people, it's going to be hard for Sony to convince them to actually make two separate versions, not really essentially two separate versions, but spend the time optimizing for one and then having a downgrade option for the other, you know. And then you have other companies that are going all in, like Crystal Dynamics with Rise of the Tomb Raider. They're going to have 1080p locked 30 frames per second version with all the graphical settings maxed right out. Then they're going to have a 1080p unlocked frame rate, which is going to be pushing it between 40 to 50 frames per second. Then they're going to have the 4K 30 version. So there's going to be multiple different versions in Rise of the Tomb Raider. So a lot of different ways that these developers are going to be handling the coding for the PS4 Pro.
Yep.
Oh, hey, another big aspect. They finally added a third USB port on the back side. That's big. That is actually pretty big.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, there's actually a third USB 3.0 port, 3.1 I think. It's on the rear.
That actually excites me a lot.
One USB port. I've always got both USB ports.
Got one wire hanging out of the front to charge my headset. Yep. So that's pretty exciting.
So yeah, they didn't talk about potential Trinity. I was a little disappointed by that, but.
Well, they kind of squashed that by not naming it Neo.
I think. Well, that's the thing is, like, they're all code names. PlayStation VR was called Morpheus. It was just a code name. Yep. PlayStation Neo is now PS4 Pro. Trinity would be whatever, but I don't think it was the right time to talk about it if it does exist. But I was still clinging to hope, you know. But yeah, all in all, I'm gonna get one. You know, we're gonna do a review of it, you know, unboxing stuff like that. But
I'll just play with his.
Yeah, I don't see the need for it. I don't see that there's a purpose behind it. But it's just a strange thing in the console space to see just a mid-generation upgrade, and you know, we'll see how it pans out. You know, I think they did the low-cost version just because if it doesn't sell very well, they're not out a whole lot. Obviously, the R&D and stuff like that. But I mean, they didn't really come out and say, you know, that they really wanted you to buy this thing. It's like, you know, you can buy this one or you can buy this one. It doesn't matter, you know. So, but they need to discuss it more. They need to get it out. They need to market it better. They need to make their videos for their games available to download. We were looking for them to see if we could actually download a full file version of their 4K videos, and they don't have them anywhere. So the only way to enjoy them is if you were to go to YouTube and look at the videos, but then, you know, the video and the audio is compressed and decompressed, so there's a little bit of loss there.
Yeah, it has to be expected.
Yeah, it would be nice to see an actual version of the, like an actual video, full file size, 4K resolution in your eyeballs.
Yep.
I want to see that HDR in full action.
Yep. We'll keep digging for it. Maybe we'll find something.
Yeah.
So the basic timeline for these consoles is the PS4 Slim on September 15th, the PS4 Pro on November 10th, and the VR headset, for those of you who are interested, will be mid-October. So the headset will be out before the Pro. Either way, you can still play it on your PS4 that you have now. They did aim the market for the PS4 Slim for entry-level or less hardcore, if you want to call it that, and of course the PS4 Pro for the more pro hardcore gamers.
Yep.
Maybe more so like this guy. So anyhow, that basically sums up Tech Talk for today. We covered bases on the Slim, the Pro, and briefly on the VR headset. If you haven't done so, you can go check out our rumor video from last week if you want. Also, if you haven't done so, make sure you click that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. We thank you for watching this. If you made it to the end,
Talk to us.
Leave
in the
something.
comment section.
Yeah, leave something in the comments. Talk to us. We're very interactive when it comes to that. If you have any questions or comments of any kind, so go ahead and do that. Anyway, I'm Tech Nate.
I'm Rusty Sheriff's Badge.
It's been another episode of Tech Talk.
PlayStation Edition.
Thanks for watching, guys.